We're back finally. And we're finally meeting the military.
Christ, kid,
You might be wondering where the hell they are in all this, but they're here.
You ought to know better than most that it's not about.
They're also fucking useless.
You got. Well, what is it?
Yeah, they're the military in a supernatural, like, in urban fantasy, and they're not actively using, like, not actively involved beforehand, so they're completely useless.
It's more that they're just baseline humans and we're superhuman.
I mean, yes, but that doesn't make them any less useless.
That's true, but it's not their fault. They're doing their best, okay?
Yeah, they're trying their best.
It's not their fault that they're red shirts.
We don't want to end up in a situation. We like to keep our cabalist relations civil. It can happen to the best of us, you know.
I like this sort of X-Files thing where the government knows the supernatural exists, or at least part of it does, and they have like an office and deputized agents for it.
The way that she talks out, it sounds like there are like formal relationships with the various cabals and various factions, which makes sense and is also amazing.
Yes, even if technically the Illuminati controls the United States, they have to keep up the appearance of neutrality.
And hey, at least they can use being the Illuminati, they can use the government as a middleman to screw with the other factions, or to serve as a quote-unquote neutral party if they're negotiating.
That's true.
A nice leverage.
Our only line of defense is those filthy orangutans.
And we're gonna meet the Sasquatches.
Apes is what they are, and I'm not sure how long they'll last.
Racist.
But you know what they say.
I do apologize for the end of this video, because I thought I knew how to do the quest, but eventually I end up looking it up, and it's just annoying. I don't like this investigation quest.
Stop.
Yeah, but you will hear over the radio at some point, "It's a bug hunt, man!"
Beautiful. But
especially because you are hunting bugs, like the Akab are. The Akab are all over this fucking area. Like, all you're gonna fight here is Akab, Wendigos, and then there's one area with Draugr.
So, question.
Mm-hmm.
If Sasquatches are born in American territory and are intelligent enough to, speak and use tools, do they qualify for citizenship?
In the same way that Native Americans do, which is to say, no, but the government passed a law that says yet. Okay, maybe not Native Americans, because that's an issue of nations and stuff. It's very complicated. I guess they would be, but you'd have to prove that in a court of law.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there would definitely be, like, a landmark legal case. Especially because they can't speak human languages.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of point and grunt, so I don't know how you put them on the stand, really.
Voice to speech, and not voice to speech, like those keyboards that read words aloud. Like,
or you could do American Sign Language. I mean, they have 5 fingers.
That's true.
And if you can teach an ape sign language, you could probably teach a Sasquatch sign language.
Yeah, like if you can teach an ape basic sign language, you can teach a Sasquatch sign language in the same way that like any human could learn it. Maybe they'd have to do something different with it, depending on how they differ from like human baseline thought, but still same principle. They'll just double down the urban fantasy here. Yeah. Man, we're going to be talking a lot about Native American stuff here. It's complicated because in a lot of situations, a lot of tribes are at once American members of a lot of them are American citizens by birth and members of sovereign, like maybe not sovereign countries, but members of tribes with their own legal standing.
They weren't American citizens technically until the 30s.
I mean, I'm talking about right now, but yeah.
Oh yeah, right now. I'm just saying, as part of that, being independent states, they were not all blanketly considered American citizens until the 1930s, when Congress passed a citizenship law.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wanted someone who was native to help talk about this stuff, but I couldn't get anyone.
No, maybe one of them will drop by. I feel talking about one of them is kind of almost insulting, but maybe somebody will drop by, get really angry at what we're saying, and then join. I'll work out for the best.
Well, if we say something annoying, it's just out of ignorance. Like, I'm not up on native relations.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a leftist, but I'm not up on native relations.
Yeah, and I mean, on the one hand, ignorance doesn't exactly, like, if you don't see someone walking down the road and you knock them over, they're still knocked over. But on the other hand, as long as you keep an open mind afterwards, like, you can actually, change. So, But yeah, that's...
I did hear someone who is native make a good point in that the only reason the genocide stopped is because whites ceased caring.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, this... Eventually more quests unlock from the Sasquatch, I'm pretty sure. But we need to do another part of the main story first. Next we'll be doing next video will be either 2 videos or a long video where we do a trailer park that is on the Wabanaki Reservation. And that's also got a dungeon associated with it, which is really cool because it's a spirit journey. Essentially, you smoke a peace pipe and then have a spirit journey back in time. And that's the dungeon.
Huh. Oh yeah, and you fight the Maya.
You fight the Mayans and the Akab and the Filth.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the Filth showed up in prior ages? Because
Yes, that is mentioned many times.
Oh.
Later, mostly in Tokyo, where you really get more of a picture of the Filth in Tokyo.
Yeah, and that's something I never did. So there you go.
Yeah, like you, for lack of a better word, you meet the Filth in Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
There's some serious shit that happens with the
Spoilers.
Filth in Tokyo.
But yeah, as you saw in the first video, there's some pretty wacky stuff in Tokyo.
There is a quest in Tokyo I'm going to spoil now. It is a mini side quest. But you remember how we possessed that girl in the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we saw through her eyes? You can meet that girl, and she's still being possessed. The bees are constantly awakening people, and they are all living through her experiences. So she is constantly reliving experiences with her body, like, unable to move, while being unable to move her body.
Jeez. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's really weird and fucked. It really shows you, like, even the bees are not perfectly good, or at least they don't understand humans perfectly. I spoiled that one because it will be months before we get there, so...
God. Yeah.
Especially because we had a bunch of recording stuff happen, so...
Yeah,
technical glitches are the bane of all LPs.
Yeah, there it was.
Yep, there it was.
You read all that crap about government cover-ups, conspiracies? Damn right it's a cover-up. We all had too much to lose if the world knew what was going on. You think vampires could bleed virgins if everyone decorated their homes with garlic? Shit, soldier, we had deals. Signed, sealed, and delivered. They don't apply anymore. From what I hear, Turvey's gone topsy all around the globe, from Wichita to Wallachia. And I'm not sure I like our odds this time.
Sir, excuse me for a second. May I? Thanks. Listen, the captain is old school, in a good way. Believes we're fighting the same war, you know, like World War Dos. But thing is, that's not how we operate. Not when it comes to matters of the extra-normal and paracult. We have to keep things on the QT. Sub Rosa. Fewer people in the know, fewer people know. And you should appreciate that, being part of the benevolent conspiracy.
The bugs are starting to gain the upper hand out here. Take away the queen bee, however, and they run around like headless chickens in a coop.
Could this man be more cliche?
Yeah, not all of this game's characters are vibrant and
No,
popping.
I fully believe this writing is intentional. Like, you're
Oh, yeah,
supposed
absolutely.
to think he's funny.
Yeah, he is.
Not spread. Believe me, we will do whatever it takes to stop the invasion right here. Whatever it takes.
Yeah,
Just so
I think we talked over it, but they mention, she's like, we've got enough firepower out there to level the island beyond the fog.
Yeah,
Which essentially means there's at least a carrier air group and a couple of B-52s with nukes.
yeah. I would not like. I would say the funny thing about government cover-ups is, for something like this, that would really take a bunch of like. It would take something actually supernatural to do, because there'd be so many people with so much to gain by twisting things, and eventually somebody would be dumb and careless and blow the top off things. It's like people have huge amount. Like, I was reading about military operations in the Middle East recently, and there were some of the commanders that they brought on to talk about it were like, we could not keep our like elite soldiers from giving out confidential information to strippers, just like to try and impress them. And these were people. These were like decorated soldiers with solid records before and after these incidents. So
Quick access inventory updated.
it assumes, conspiracy theories assume a level of competence that humans just don't have, and a level of universal competence, because there are so many people out there who are good, incredibly good at a few things, and just completely awful at everything else.
All you need is one dumb motherfucker.
Yeah, all you need is somebody making a really, really bad decision, and the whole thing starts to unravel.
Yeah, I'm searching for the other backpack, and I finally found it. This is an interesting thing, because we only learn a little bit about what this is, but this is the ruins of an asylum. Yeah, an asylum on an Illuminati-controlled island. Just imagine that shit.
Yeah, that sounds... God.
The best part is it burned to the ground in the 60s, so, like, it already wasn't... I don't know if you guys know anything about how asylums used to be, but they used to be not great.
It used to be horrifying. Like, there were... God, there's many of them, even most of them, do have massive issues now. That's the sort of thing that... Like, you may have heard have you heard of Nellie Bly?
Yes.
Yeah.
The reporter who pretended to be insane to prove how hard it was to get out of an asylum.
Yeah, she got like a false diagnosis, and after she got in there and she provided proof that the diagnosis was false, they just diagnosed her with like some kind of some delusion diagnosis, and just kept her there. It took her months to get out, and it was a huge scandal that ended up bringing down a lot of what had become an industry.
Oh yes, asylums used to be the place you sent your girls who happened to be pregnant.
Mhm.
If you didn't want to send, if you weren't Catholic enough to send them to a nunnery.
Or it sent,
Girls
or
who were
it sent you.
pregnant, girls who talked out. Yep.
There they go.
They get shipped off to the asylum with womanly delusions and horrifically treated by the staff, and you could just fill in the blank there.
Like if you had black sheep, or if you had somebody who was, actually neurodiverse, then you could send them there to be
Horrifically
yeah.
tortured in the name of curing them. Like,
yeah, by people who did not understand anything and didn't care that they didn't understand it. God, but
it reminds me of I listened to excerpts from Chapo Trap House, but they had like a very non-political one where they were in Providence, Rhode Island. And they talked about H.P. Lovecraft, and his dad caught syphilis and was confined to an asylum because he was going insane. And they mentioned that they're like the Butler Memorial Hospital, and they're like, that place is haunted as fuck. But no, that excerpt is actually very funny and very illuminating into Lovecraft. You should totally listen to it. It's on YouTube. Even if you don't like Chapo Trap House, it's a very funny segment getting into H.P. Lovecraft, which is related to this game, because this game is totally...
yes, yeah. This is a very modern take on Lovecraft, but that's still ultimately a take on Lovecraft.
It reminds me of a Call of Cthulhu game I wanted to run, where everything H.P. Lovecraft wrote was true, but it was all racist propaganda.
Yeah.
I think I might have mentioned this.
Yeah, we had a conversation, and I remember ending up plugging the Litany of Earth series, like I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Which is exactly that. It's been... God, we've been running this thing for months now.
I mean, I've put out the call to other LPers, and I'm putting out the call again. I have a number of other games I'd like to LP. Some of them are adventure games. One of them's really weird. It's on Steam. It's called Broken Reality. It's the most vaporwave game I've ever seen, and it's a commentary on the internet. But I mean, if you'd like to participate in that, I mean, you've got your hands full with this one.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want to just... Like, I'm not saying you can't help, but you've got your hands full with this one in your life, so...
Yeah. Like...
If anybody's interested in co-commentating on something, drop me a PM or, I don't know, post in the thread. Thread doesn't get much interaction.
Yeah.
Neither does my YouTube. I have 14 subscribers.
Whatever. We're doing this for... Even if it's
We're
a
doing this
limited
for
audience,
fun.
but...
Yeah, we're doing this for fun.
Mm-hmm.
I am spending, well, not my money. I'm unemployed and taken care of by my father due to medical issues. But I'm spending his money on editing because I am terrible at editing.
And hey, someday somebody is going to go to the LP archive to see the Secret World, see if there are any Secret World LPs and find those.
Yeah, it's going to go offline and they're going to look and they're like, what's this thing? I heard about it. And they're going to see our rambling talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I really like the Akab. Even if they're not strictly... I mean, they're one of the original monsters in this. One of the few monsters that are completely original. Because I remember you saying you'd done some look into them, and there's, like, nothing. It's like just this game.
Mm-hmm. And like they share a name with a certain kind of, like, Mayan demon, I think. But other than that...
So they're completely original, and I really like them because they are insectile and seemingly naturally occurring. Like, this whole infestation is interesting because they're not native to the area, and you get the sense that there is an area they are native to with native what like I don't want to say predators. I guess they are the top of the food chain, but you get the sense that these are natural things. These are not demons. These are a
These are animals.
paranatural creature. Yes. I mean, they have like a life cycle and a hierarchy like bees. Like they have queens and nests and stuff. They're not like the Draugr, who are verifiably unnatural and
Yeah.
only a reflection of mythology.
Or like stuff like the Wendigo, which are post-human, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, it says the asylum burned down in 61, and the Illuminati would believe they had nothing to do with the telekinetic research they were doing.
Yeah.
And of course, you know what that is a reference to.
Yep.
Carrie.
Didn't she die at the end of the... Well, actually, that doesn't matter, but... was there... I know there was a
think
Carrie
there were-
sequel.
Updated.
Firestarter was the sequel.
Oh,
I haven't read either book, so I couldn't tell you what happens.
Radar module activated.
I love the metal detector.
Yeah, it's a nice mechanic.
Item located.
Just watching the sea. A lot of dead
Excuse me,
soldiers here.
I have to cough now. I apologize.
It's danger of the times.
I like what Sam Krieg, the fake Stephen King, said in that these guys just keep getting up. Like they are memories of people created by the filth. There is an infinite supply of them.
Mhm.
And you'll notice a glitch here where I'm shooting nothing as a shotgun. I wish that was a skin. I wish, Gun Hands was a skin.
Yeah, that would be incredible. No.
Radar module activated. Item located.
Yeah, as you can see, Soldier's not doing great.
Yeah. This is just completely not the... This is not where you want to go. This is not where conventional forces will succeed.
This is not where
I
even
think,
special forces will succeed, because, like the thing says, we're only succeeding because we're awakened by Gaia.
Yeah. And ultimately, if they really did want to, I think a nuke would kill everything here. It would...
I
Maybe
don't
not...
even want to think about radioactive filth, okay?
Fair enough.
And especially if you nuke something, it gets in the air.
Yeah.
Do you want this blowing into fucking the rest of Maine?
It depends on the kind of bomb you're using. There are neutron bombs out there.
Yeah, but I don't get the feeling that these are conventional organisms that are affected by neutrons. The reason a neutron bomb is so effective is on conventional biology, and these are definitely not conventional.
I suppose, I think...
But I suppose in a
Yeah.
world that's got the occult, we'd have occult nukes.
That's a terrifying term, but that's probably true.
I mean, in the Transylvania section, a lot of what we find is old Soviet Cold War occult projects. Like 2 of the dungeons are that.
Oh, yeah, God, there's a lot of... They did... I mean, like, I make fun of Soviet super science, but honestly, Soviet super science is a lot more interesting, a lot less, awful than Nazi super science.
That's true.
Because you had stuff that was just as dumb, but with a lot less racism.
That is also true. But we will find stuff just as bad in those dungeons, because vampires.
But yeah. Yeah. God, the way that they take vampires is really interesting, but I think even considering how far away it is from now, this is the sort of thing that either you know already from playing it or you don't want to be spoiled on. Because that's like, I've never seen anything quite like that take. It combines several different versions, which is in a really nice way.
I'll tell you one thing, kid. This isn't my first brush with the supernatural. Far from it. Our unit has seen some action. Johannesburg in '87, Siberia in '93, Rio in '08. Last month, we spent a good 4 days knee-deep in New Yorker excrement, hunting a flock of incubi that got separated from their mistress. They turned feral. Did you know that?
Yes,
They lose control. Used to be you could parley with the succubi. Avoid too much bloodshed. The rules have changed.
I like that what they're getting across in drips and drabs here is
that's not...
things are fucked up. Like, everything that's normal, quote-unquote, about the occult is broken now.
Mono a mono testosterone-fueled battle royale. This is not our brief. And I shouldn't have to remind you who's running the operation. Even if we can't get a signal through the fog, it's the Para Division...
I've got scars all over, and I'm not just talking about the ones that bleed. But if I've learned one thing in the past 40 years, it's that they bleed too.
I mean...
Every single one of them.
Yes, they do, sir, but so do we. And we bleed out a lot faster than they...
I will say that...
I don't even know why I fucking bother with this fucking... What the hell are you looking at?
I will say he did just describe how you can how they used to negotiate them when it was possible.
Stop.
Like,
And we've seen part of why it's no longer possible,
yeah,
theoretically at least, when we went to that first Hell dungeon.
yeah, Hell's in a very interesting place.
Local bounty detected. Initiating.
You have some good friends. You've reached the maximum amount of skill point, singular.
Yeah, I think I take care of that here.
Watch out! Locate the intruder. Search and destroy.
I take care of that at some point.
Yeah.
Everybody fall in. We have to hold this point.
I have to imagine that conventional firearms aren't useful against... It would be useful against, like, a Cobb, but not against Draugr or zombies.
Well, maybe not against zombies, but I feel like against Draugr.
I don't...
Well, they must be somewhat effective. I mean, the people at the police station and Sam Krieg are both hanging out with just regular guns.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, don't they work on zombie shoot-'em-in-the-head rules?
Yes. And
So,
again,
yeah.
that's only because that's what you expect.
Yeah. Yeah, they are filth animated, and I don't know who knows how Draugr biology actually works.
I'm getting the feeling it doesn't, it just appears to.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you think? Because bullets work by causing like they don't. I'm kind of outside of my specialty here.
They cause
like
damage. They cause tissue damage.
yeah, and they do a lot of it has to do with shock as well.
Shock and exsanguination are typically how you die from bullet wounds.
And if I'm not sure if either of those come into play with it when it comes to Draugr. Like, I'm pretty sure that they bleed, but I don't know how much blood they have to shed or how fast it heals or whether it actually does anything if they run out.
Well, something has to happen to them because conventional firearms do something to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing it's because we expect the firearms to do something.
Yeah.
And then anything it doesn't work on, they use the magic.
Yep.
I would love if there were, like, Jason references in this. Like, the locals are fighting a thing that can't be killed by conventional weapons.
And hey, Huskarls. I have a whole rant lined up about how the connection between the Huskarls and European knighthood that is almost completely unrelated to this. So I'll save it for when we're wandering around in nowhere waiting.
Oh yeah, that's later in this
Yeah.
video, so you have it ready.
Yeah, I didn't know that would come up. I found that out the other day, and I thought it was neat, especially if you've played Skyrim.
I have indeed played Skyrim. I don't think many people have not played Skyrim at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, but yeah.
They keep fucking re-releasing it, so...
Todd Howard holds a gun to your head in one hand and a copy of a new remastered PS5 edition in the other.
Special assignment received. Initializing.
There's the Wendigos.
Still smart enough to set traps.
Yeah. It's funny. Wendigos are... I've been...
Algonquin.
Yeah,
right?
I've read some... There have been people complaining about this recently. They're a really important part of Algonquin culture. It's like if you kill someone and eat someone out of desperate hunger, you will eventually strike again and be driven to murder, and eventually your body will twist under the influence of that act until you end up crawling, twisted, with backwards feet, unable to fill yourself up. And there's a lot of people say there are the definition of true evil in a lot of the cultures that believe in them. So a lot of the members of those cultures really hate people taking Wendigos and appropriating them and turning them to something else. And it's interesting because I have no idea how much what was the name of the studio put this together?
I don't know.
Famicom.
Funcom.
I don't know how much they actually consulted with Algonquins putting this together. What?
Well, I'm gonna be devil's advocate here. Well, you could say the same thing about people who are very religious Christians and demons, and you could say the same thing about people who are very religious Muslims and genies.
I was actually going in a different direction here.
Okay.
It's because, like, when I knowing that Wendigos are on their way, I just read some of those posts. This is very, very close to, as far as I can tell, to what they are described as, and avoiding the use. This avoids the uses they were specifically asking people not to do. They're not portrayed.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not portrayed at all sympathetically, which is a huge thing that keeps coming up, and they're portrayed as not intelligent per se, but they are monsters rather than like people.
Medic! Why do they never send enough medics?
It's interesting that bullets. I don't know why I have an easier time believing that bullets are more effective against ghosts than they would be against Draugr. But
Well, you have to remember, these guys are using magic bullets.
yeah, there it is.
Like, these particular soldiers have magic bullets. I imagine some dude with a shotgun is not gonna have a good time, but we're magic.
Yeah. Like, you know, we are so far beyond these guys being bees, but they're not. They aren't walking in with their bare fists here. These are professional soldiers who have, like, equipment, who came prepared for this. They're just not. You just can't come prepared enough.
I still love that implication I mentioned before, that canonically, from getting your B powers to the end of Tokyo is 2 weeks.
These people have not been here for very long.
But what that means is you didn't get any training.
Yeah, yeah. You did. Yeah, you got like maybe a couple hours.
They put a gun in your hands and gave you a sledgehammer and said, "Good luck."
They gave you They gave you some chained up demons to beat up to get used to your weapons, and other than that, they gave you a pat on the back and then pushed you out.
Because you're a bee. If you
You're
die,
a bee.
you just come back. I imagine if you were a conventional agent, there'd be training, but you're a bee. You just come back.
It doesn't really. Yeah, and also there are things more powerful than bees, but they're not exactly common. And ultimately, bees, given just how many bees Gaia has been pumping out, they can afford to do this rather than like, because the stuff that by the time they run into something that's dangerous enough to just thwart a bee, the bee probably has enough experience to take it. If that made any sense.
Well, my bee doesn't, because canonically my bee gets through by ramming his head into a concrete wall.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And this is me going, okay, now I have to do the fucking... this is me going, now I have to do the Runestone mission, and I can't... It's just annoying. Like, they give you a map, and they say go to the first Runestone, but they don't mark which one is the first Runestone. You can see which is the first Runestone. They don't tell you, they're in a circle.
I bet those runes are like an alphabet. There's an alphabet there. I think that's Futhark.
Yeah, these are Futhark runes.
Then that does have an alphabetical order, so you can probably just look that up.
If that's it, I never thought to do that. Because I went, okay, it's in a semicircle. So there's two ends to the semicircle. I just go to those. No, it's the R-shaped one in the very bottom.
I gotta look this up. This is gonna bother me for the rest of the video if I don't quickly look this up.
Yeah, look up Futhark and see what where in the alphabet the R comes.
Nope, it's not, in fact, at the beginning of the alphabet. So,
It's just bad game design.
I guess.
Yeah, I derp around
Wait.
a while until I just look up the fucking solution.
Actually, I think it
so
may
I
be...
apologize.
I think it might be backwards. Yeah, it does. Who cares?
But make your rant now, because we have time.
Oh, right now, this is the time? Okay, excellent.
This is the time.
So, when you think of a knight, what do you think they spend their off time doing?
Either training or administrating their holdings.
Yeah, sort of, because there are actually several classes of knight. So, you remember how in Skyrim you had, God, I can't remember the exact names. Like, you had the Jarls, who were the lords, and they had Huskarl, like what were you? Thanes and then Carls
Yeah,
or
Thane.
Huskarls?
You were the Thane, so you could get out of trouble.
And like you had, were they called Housecarls or Huskarls or
Huskarls.
like Huskarls? So there was like in Scandinavian society, there was like, okay, this I didn't know this was coming, so I didn't have a chance to look this up and drill it back into my head. So a lot of this is like mixed up a little bit, but it's like Scandinavian society, Viking Age. There were chieftains, jarls, and they had a bunch of like Huskarls literally means house servants, but they were basically a mixture of bodyguards and like their retinue, and the people who followed them around and fought for them. They invaded, and they ended up establishing themselves in England, especially, and sort of assimilating. And a system based on that kind of started to coagulate, where you had your earl or your baron, somebody who was a full member of the realm who had a hereditary title that, well, maybe they could or couldn't have it pulled away, that was associated with their family strong. Under them, they had a whole constellation they had a bunch of knights at their disposal from different, that they got to assign things depending on what they wanted, and they can just take those land assignments away if they wanted to. They almost always didn't, but they could, while there were usually legal restrictions on higher nobility losing their hereditary lands. Some knights, the knights whose like dads used to rule that area or something, they'd inherit their land unofficially for what was basically inheritance tax. Others would get given that land and then have it taken away. And this land would usually be a village, which often wasn't actually enough to really keep up a knight with just like a couple hundred people, but that was another thing. The rest were what were called household knights. And household knights would hang around either landed knights like manor, or hang around with like the higher nobles, just sort of sitting around eating their food, training sometimes. And they would landed knights had legal requirements on how long you could take them away from their lands, and if you didn't, if you exceeded those, you had to pay them through the nose. For household knights, they just had to come along. You had to feed them, you had to pay for their equipment, but you could do whatever you wanted with them. And the structure ended up looking a lot like you had a jarl, a major landed lord, a thane, someone who was high enough rank to have lower knights, or huskarls beneath them, even though they were not actually hereditary rulers. And then you had huskarls, which were just spare fightersmen running around and like killing people for their landed knights or lords. And it's kind of weird for something that is basically supposed to be Scandinavia, that they copied the medieval England model so closely when it comes to just how that whole system works. And maybe a few people in this audience will find that interesting, but
well, it's no surprise they copied it. The large portions of England were occupied or colonized by Vikings, so
yeah. It's the
But I do want to say the name of this quest we're doing is Strangers from a Strange Land, which I believe is a reference to Stranger in a Strange Land, a Heinlein book that I recommend you don't read because it's very weird and got creepy sex stuff in it, which is pretty much most of what he wrote after he had a stroke in the 70s.
Yeah, God. Like the thing, what I think I missed because I didn't have a chance to organize this. There was no actual distinction between Thane and Huskarl in Scandinavian society. They were just sort of different names for the same thing. They only really separated once they got into England and started assimilating. And they ended the fact that you ended up with, like, when you get to be a Thane, you get a house, or at least you get the chance to purchase it. You get land, and you get your own household knight to follow you around. So, and that's something that happened in medieval England long after the Scandinavians either settled in, assimilated, or left. Which is why it's so. It's not that odd, but it's just interesting.
Additional
So
assignment
you might be
received.
wondering,
Initializing.
what the fuck is this runestone stuff? Well, they're Vikings. They wrote runes. So if you do you know who created runes in Viking culture?
What are they called? The shamans isn't the right word, but religious
no,
leaders.
the god.
Oh, like mythologically, that would be Odin probably. And there's
Yes, and there's Hunin and Moon and his twin crows.
His memory, you can have that one for free. We laid our blades upon this far shore, exhausted, only to lift them against worshippers of the docks, and we carved this story in stone, where it waits still to be read.
Do you know what was it? Do you know? I wonder if it's like the Massachusetts runestone this stuff is based on. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Vaguely, yes. I recall there are several supposed Norse runestones found in New England.
I think they've all been debunked at last, but yeah, there were a bunch of.
One of the things I did like about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I did enjoy more than Odyssey, was you get to travel to Vinland and meet Native Americans, and you don't speak their language, so you're just sort of miming with them.
Yeah,
But you get a special set of gear, because you have to go there disguised as a slave. So you get a special set of Native American garb and weapons.
neat.
I still have to beat Valhalla. Like, I did every minor side quest, but I didn't beat the main story, and then they came out with expansions. So I might do that after we record.
Across the white-capped sea to green isles of endless range.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed is one of those series that are now off limits to me, unfortunately. I really liked Black Flag.
Black Flag was fucking amazing.
Yeah, it was.
It was exactly the breath of fresh air the series needed.
Yeah, they
The
kind of.
problem is they've been trying to recreate that, and it doesn't really work.
It's
Like, not every one of your game needs a ship.
yeah, like the thing about Black Flag is that it felt like it was focus grouped from start to finish, but they did it right, and they didn't care. They did it because they focus grouped. It felt like they focus grouped for what their target audiences enjoyed, rather than how to maximize microtransactions, and which is, even though it's disjointed, there's a lot of dumb parts of it. It's fun. It's good. They basically, it feels like they took a very modern, and I don't mean that in a good way, approach to game design, and kind of back-assed their way into good game design. And they have never been able to follow up on that, because the temptation for Ubisoft to monetize their sandboxes is too strong. I don't know how much of that's actually true, though. That's just what it feels like to me from how it's laid out.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is next month Far Cry 6 comes out, and that looks fun as hell. Especially because the story looks like it's not dog shit like 5.
Yeah, I remember hearing like there were good parts of this story on 5, but not all of it.
Some of their gameplay choices were very bad, and you don't get to beat the bad guy in the end. They saved that for the spin-off sequel that you had to buy. So it's like they're just blue-balling you, and it was just bad.
The only Far Cry game I've ever played was Blood Dragon, and that was a fun game.
We carried a sword.
I don't know if you ever got around to that.
Gave thanks to the gods.
I never did Blood Dragon, but I did 3, 4, 5, and
Yeah.
I pre-ordered 6.
Yeah.
So.
Oh God, you would remember. Blood Dragon is completely. It is the most 80s
Yeah,
game I've ever played.
I've heard of Blood Dragon. I've seen gameplay.
Yeah, it's
But it never really. I just didn't bother to buy the expansion. I rented 3. So.
yeah. I've never bought any Far Cry game that wasn't Blood Dragon. So I just wanted to be able to play that weird, and it worked. It was really bizarre. It was actually funny and made fun of itself in a way that wasn't like mugging for the camera. It was nice.
Do you know what my favorite Far Cry is, though? Primal.
I don't know. Is that? I swear.
That's the caveman one.
Yeah. Like the only thing I know about Far Cry is that I know 2 things about Far Cry. I know Blood Dragon. I think in 4, if you hang around in the starting area for 20 minutes, the villain comes back, explains the whole story to you, and you get a preempt, sort of a non-standard game over, because you're just like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Yeah, that's. Otherwise, I'm almost completely unfamiliar with the genre, like the whole franchise.
If you liked Blood Dragon, you might like Primal. It's very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like for physical reasons, that.
Oh, right. I keep forgetting. I apologize.
Yeah, you can't exactly see it, and you couldn't see it even if you were sitting next to me. So, the nature of an invisible disability.
I've had a lot of odd romantic relationships. I briefly dated a paraplegic, which was weird and ultimately unsatisfying, and I tried to look past it, but I couldn't for physical reasons, and it's like, you don't want to be that person that's like, you're not good enough, you're not beautiful enough for me, but it was a major turnoff that she was paraplegic, and I feel bad about that. But I helped her find disabled video game controllers. Because she was paraplegic, she could only really move her head. So I helped her, get a programmable controller that worked with Xbox 360 and the like, that was just moving your head. So, I mean, you might be able to find some sort of workaround.
I definitely could. The question is, like, between LPing multiple ways in a full-time job, I don't have the time it would take to program that something well enough to use it.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it took programming. I'm saying there was a setup process that was very easy.
Huh.
Like, it was just syncing it up and defining inputs. Like, there was no actual programming involved.
That's fair. Like, honestly...
Like, if you miss video games, there are solutions for disabled people. I would recommend you check them out.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of accessibility options. I'm probably not going to take them up because, again, I have a full-time job, and I remember what it was like to spend a lot of time on video games, and while I don't feel there was anything that wrong with it, I don't want to get trapped in that while I have so much else on my plate. Because I know myself
Fair
well
enough.
enough to know that I just get sucked down.
Fair enough.
But yeah. If there's... All I really care about, like, these days, there are also still games that I can play as long as I'm careful. Like, anything that's completely turn-based is... it's possible for me. And if it's turn-based and low in input, then I can just sort of cut it and just whatever. Like, I played Tropico quite a bit.
Tropico's very fun.
Yep, and I've played Surviving Mars, so that's a little too heavy for me. I have to stop after
What
a little
about
while.
Hearts of Iron 4?
I can't take Hearts of Iron. I don't like Hearts of Iron. I did play a
okay.
lot of Crusader. I really like Paradox Grand Strategy, but I just never like how they make the combat mechanics. And Hearts of Iron is about the combat mechanics. My brain just does not handle
that's
that.
fair. I mean,
complexity.
there are some pretty good mods for it. Like, there's a great Fallout mod.
Yeah.
Oddly, do you know what the most in-depth mod for Hearts of Iron 4 is?
No?
Equestria at War, the My Little
Oh,
Pony
God.
mod.
Of course. Of course.
It is the most in-depth and lore-filled. Like, they're working hard on that shit.
Yeah, Crusader Kings mods are, like, full conversion mods are amazing. They've got a full space opera, Crisis of the Confederation, which is amazing. They have an Avatar: The Last Airbender one. They have a Game of Thrones one. They have a Elder Scrolls one, which is really wild. And they have one called After the End, which is post-apocalyptic North and Central America. And
yeah, I've seen that one.
that one is excellent. That I don't play vanilla anymore. I just play After the End.
I should note, we talked over it
Oops.
because we were talking, but they mentioned Loki as what's going on. Loki fought with them.
The game was done just but on that day.
Loki walked amongst them, and which is why we saw Loki here. He stayed and went south. We learned that up here at the next runestone, but Loki came over on the ship, but stayed and went south to the Mayans.
You still there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, it cut out for a second. But yeah. I think my first time through, I wasn't paying that much attention. I didn't fully grasp that until, like, grasp what was going on there until, like, the very end. But such is life.
Have you guessed? The wise man was the Allfather, the Wednesday man, the Raven God. In his honey dreaming, we shall carry him these new thoughts, these new memories. In time they made to return to the land of snow.
Loki knew that the Draugr were coming.
Where the Draugr drowned. This Loki knew, so he did not sail. South he went to find the secrets of the Dark Sun.
The Dark Sun is a reference to what we saw, which is also a reference to the filth.
Mm-hmm.
And now we just travel to the Wabanaki Trailer Park. We're immune to fall damage. I think I mentioned that, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's canonical.
It might be.
Which is pretty cool because it means you could jump out of a plane and land fine.
Yeah, I mean,
And you're a bee, so even if you didn't land fine,
Yeah.
you'd still be fine.
you could just locate an anima well, skydive there, and even if you land head first, you just respawn at the anima well. And even if
Okay,
you break
this is
everything.
about Tyler
yeah.
Freeborn, and that's a DLC, not a DLC, but like an expansion they did that reveals more about this area. So we'll see that later.
And speaking of later, it looks like we are almost done with this video.
Yep.
So
Next time we will be doing the Wabanaki Trailer Park, and I will put up a video of the dungeon. Dungeons after this can't be soloed, so I will have to somehow manage to find a group of people willing to run it.
see you then.
See you then.